A furious roar echoed through the darkness. How dare she refuse? The heroine stood frozen, a bloody blade in her hand. Her dress was soaked in splashes of scarlet. She had to run, now. Horror gripped her heart as she turned and fled. The Empire was plunged into the darkness of night. The moon and stars lit the frightened girl's path as she rushed away, her breath ragged. The cold currents of the river raged ahead, their roar matching the chaos in her mind. In the rippling water, she saw her reflection, bloodied and broken. She had no other choice. The river was wild and unforgiving. If she jumped now, she would surely die. Cold sweat and salty tears streamed down her face. But she would not die. That much had already been decided. Icy wind tormented her as she stood on the bow of a ship, but she didn't feel it. Her mind was numb. Maybe this was the only way. If only she could avoid such a terrible fate. She was so tired, so very tired. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. It would all end quickly. Her thin, blood-stained hands began to loosen their grip on the railing. Her fingers slowly uncurled, obedient to her decision. And then, graceful and tragic, her silhouette in the bloodied dress tipped forward, falling into the raging mouth of the river. If only she could defy her fate. That was her last thought. The strong current swallowed her without hesitation. The waves clashed overhead, claiming the uninvited guest. 6 months later, the people of the Empire greeted a new day with serenity. In a quiet corner of the main square, a wooden sign creaked softly in the morning breeze. Cardinal. A cozy cafe, beloved by locals. I wish I could meet the main character already. When will she finally appear? Someone muttered. Her name is Lorena. She's the servant of Duke Claven. But once she was Laura, a 27-year-old woman from South Korea. 6 months ago, she was transported into a novel called The Blind Beast's Flower. Her employer now, the protagonist, Elon Claven, the Empire's most formidable swordmaster, undefeated, favoured by the heavens, known for his piercing red eyes. The Eyes of Odor. He had many titles. Now, they called him the Blind Beast. He had been poisoned during a battle and lost the will to live. The antidote? A rare flower that bloomed for only 10 days, right in his own garden. In the original story, the heroine Karina finds the flower, cures him, and he falls in love. Elon proposes, and they live happily ever after. Lorena's mission is simple. Ensure the story unfolds as written, without interfering. Only then, perhaps, can she return to her world. But there's a problem. She only read the beginning and the ending of the novel. Her role? A secondary, faceless character. In one scene, Karina once asked Elon to stop because there were servants nearby, and the Duke told his #1 maid to leave. Without a name, without mention again. That was her. Simple, right? But where is Karina? The flower bloomed a week ago. Lorena has done everything right, so why hasn't the heroine appeared? Her return home depends on the story's conclusion. She can't stay here forever. Soon. Elon will return from his meeting with the Emperor. And, as his only servant, Lorena knows she's in for a severe scolding. After all, she had left her blind master behind. The beast had no other helpers. She couldn't just stay here, doing nothing. She needed to go inside Cardinal and find out what she could, no matter how little. A cheerful greeting rang out as she entered the cafe. Welcome. Anything the young lady wants. Lorena nodded politely, scanning the room. She was looking for someone. Silver hair, emerald eyes. With such striking features, the person she sought wouldn't go unnoticed. Beauty was always a signature trait of main characters in these novels. But no, nothing, just the usual crowd. The young man at the counter saw only a beautiful woman with violet eyes. A bald customer cast a displeased glance her way. Do they all really look the same? One of them muttered. Then a finger pointed toward the wall. That lady over there, she looks just like the girl on the poster. Elsia Uther. Golden hair, violet eyes. Wanted. Do not harm. Capture and report to the Temple of Huna. Reward, 99,999 gold. Just another day in Nolla. Only 3 days left before the flower withered. This ridiculous world of romantic novels. How was it so hard to find the main character? Let that golden-haired girl slow down, someone shouted suddenly. 11. A heavy hand slammed down onto Lorina's wrist. What was this ignorant orc doing? She's the one from the poster, someone said eagerly. There's a huge reward for her. Idiots. What did they want with a simple maid? Be quiet, don't attract attention, one muttered. We're not going to hurt her. We'll just take her to the temple, cash in. What was she now, a cow at market? People can't be sold. Don't they know that? She kicked one of them in the shin. What did he say? Oh, that bastard. She bit his hand next. Then, a shadow, a threatening silhouette appeared behind the scoundrels. With a single, effortless movement, the mighty beast threw the bald man aside. He crashed to the ground with a sickening thud. What the hell is this guy doing? One of the men stammered. We saw her first. She's ours. He gestured toward Lorina like she was merchandise. But the blind beast, Elonclave, instantly pulled Lorina into a protective embrace. His hand, strong and warm, gripped her tightly. Why is she thinking about that now? How dare they treat a lady so rudely? Wait, one man whispered. Is this guy blind? Did a blind man just knock out my friend with one hand? They started laughing nervously. Look, just move along. She's staying with us. She's our prize. You don't want trouble, do you? Elon didn't flinch. Lorina squealed in panic. Be careful, she shouted. But he didn't need to see them. The beast disarmed and disabled them effortlessly. Leon Claven, truly the greatest of warriors. So this was what she left the Duke's mansion for? Adventure? No, she only wanted to drink tea after his meeting with the Emperor. When she hadn't been at the mansion, Elo had come looking for her. Alone, in a dangerous city. And that, she realized, was exactly what a main character would do. She'd wanted to visit Cardinal for a long time. But why was a man like him, with all his titles and glory, speaking so casually to her? Since they were both here, they might as well have some tea. Lorina smiled. Finally. Her plan had worked. Maybe, just maybe, they'd run into Karina here. Mr. Elon wanted the same tea and chocolate as the maid. Just like after his meeting with the Emperor. Even though she saw him every day, Lorina couldn't help but admire his beauty. Here he was, the protagonist, in the flesh. His Majesty had summoned the beast for a personal conversation. The Duke rarely left home. This was the first time Lorina had seen him in a formal tailcoat, and how it suited him. The Emperor believed it was time for Leland to marry for the continuation of the Claven line. Why does he care so much? And who had been chosen as the bride? Elon didn't know. Apparently His Majesty would decide. How romantic. What nonsense. Lorina smacked the table. Why was she reacting like this? It wasn't her they were marrying off. What about true feelings? A connection deeper than blood, stronger than death? Where was the sweeping romance of all those short stories? And Bridget here? Why are you shouting? Elin asked, puzzled. Among nobility, marriage is political, he said. It's not unusual. But Elon will have to spend his whole life with her. Shouldn't he marry someone he loves? Like Karina, she added quickly. Yes, the main character must fall in love with the main heroine. Elon blinked. What kind of beast hasn't read fairy tales? Lorina flushed. Of course I believe that. Marriage without love is just sad. She had to return to her world. Let her think rationally. Who needs a blind husband anyway? He's just a burden. What did you say? Elon asked sharply. Lorena was about to slap him. No, he's beautiful. He'll find love. Or maybe he won't find anyone. Just a maid. Elon, sensing her discomfort, softened. The Duke is grateful to you, he said, but I can feel eyes watching us. Of course, they were sitting in full view. People were staring, probably because he was so striking, or maybe because of her. Red hair, blue eyes, dark skin. She stood out, a walking contradiction. She looked like a walking South Korean flag. What's Korea? Elon asked. Oh no. Her appearance was rare here. May I touch it? He asked quietly. Touch? Your face. You said you were unusual. I want to understand. Lorena froze. He was her employer. She couldn't refuse, but this felt far too personal. Still, he was blind. His other senses were more acute. Fine. Let the young man touch her. Elon carefully removed his glove and murmured an apology for the sudden request. Lorena took his hand gently, guiding it toward her cheek. His palm was cold, but strangely magnetic. Strong fingers traced the contours of her face, lingering at her chin. Then the beast's hand slowly withdrew. Lorena sighed, her heart heavy. Had he seen through her? But Elon smiled, radiant. You really do have an unusual appearance. Come on, seriously? This guy is so sweet, it's unfair. If only she were a different character. No. Stop. She was here for a reason. The cafe was full of people. She could hear them. Cardinal was in the centre of the square, with round tables like the ones at the Duke's mansion. Thin curtains hung in the windows, though they were grimy and hadn't been washed in ages. Sunlight filtered through the clouds, bathing the place in soft warmth. The view was beautiful, the atmosphere peaceful. Lorena had lied today, but if Elon didn't like this place, he might never come again. And this was supposed to be where he met Karina. Karina, the orphan girl from a remote village. She was adopted by a noble relative and brought to the capital for her debut. Before that, she had wandered into this cafe, and she had been attacked by bandits. That was when Ilan left his mansion for the first time, and saved her. After that, they became good friends. The main character visited the young man in his mansion, found a healing flower in his garden, and restored his sight. But by this time, Elon should have already met Karina and regained his vision. There were only 2 days left, so where was this frivolous girl? A person's life was at stake here. By the way, the Duke had long wanted to ask the maid about her unusual name. The young master knew that the maid had recently lost her memory, so he was curious too, but explaining what her name meant would only drag the story on longer. It seemed like the girl was finally coming to her senses. Thank God the young miss is alive, said an elderly couple, anxiously. She was covered in blood, and they had feared the worst. What kind of place is this? One asked. Apparently a lady from a noble family. How does she feel? She seems fine, said another. Can we use their mobile phone? The elderly woman's face froze in confusion at the girl's words. Maybe she had ended up in some remote village on the outskirts. This was Laura's first memory after her rebirth. If she reached the ending, she might be able to return home. The first thing she did was look for a job, and the only offer she could get was as a servant to Duke Claven. Without documents, it was the only acceptable work. All the other maids had fled from the blind beast, despite the good pay. So, would this lady stay or run? What's her name? Someone asked. Well, let's say Lorena, someone answered. A typical name for a romantic novel. When Lorena arrived at the mansion, it was immediately clear that the beast lived in hopeless despondency. A great hero could track his target using only unique instincts. Blindness shouldn't have been a problem. But Elon had given up his title as the greatest knight and all his honours after being poisoned. The strongest and most beautiful warrior had lost the will to live. Lorena looked around nervously and swallowed hard. She brought the master his clothes. The poisoned beast had become a true horror to the people. They didn't understand his pain and despair, so they feared him. But Elon Clavane didn't want to be understood. He didn't want anything. He simply plunged into eternal darkness. All the servants fled at night as if he were a monster. The maids threw their uniforms on the floor by the door, afraid to enter his room. Everyone, except Lorena. She knew the beautiful soul walled up inside those blocks of oppression and pain. The new maid entered her master's private chambers with ease. Lorena never tried to escape. The beast did not frighten her, and she returned to him every day. The maid tidied his bedroom, took care of his daily routine and meals. The soup was still hot. He needed to wait a little longer. Today, the young master had chicken broth. It would do him good. She gently urged him to open his mouth. Lorena truly had warm feelings for the main character. She secretly admired and cared for him. At first, the hunted beast had trouble trusting his only servant, but the maid returned day after day, witnessing his pain and suffering. Most importantly, Lorena never gave up, despite the beast's unwillingness to live. "Well, what does the handsome warrior say? How do you like the fresh chicken broth?" she asked softly. "The soup is really tasty," Elon said. Step by step, Elon Clavane began to emerge from his despair and depression. The main character received a cane for the blind and began practicing to walk. After 2 years bedridden, Ilan finally began to walk again. So after 6 months of Lorena's care and support, the beast finally recovered and started to live again. "The gentleman must be very tired today," Lorena said, preparing to bring him dinner. The main character sighed heavily and threw his head back. He knew he shouldn't indulge in fantasies. It was foolish to expect the girl to see a man in him. He was weak and feeble. Today was such a friendly day. The sun shone even through the curtains. The maid wanted to ask something. Had the young gentleman ever been to the Cardinal Cafe? "Although it's for commoners," she added, "it's still quite popular." The main character crossed his arms. He had never even heard of such a place. "Is it really famous in the capital? And why do you ask, just like that?" "It's a fairly well-known place in the Empire," Lorena explained. By the way, she almost forgot. She had to take a report from the local priest, Bernard, the manager of Duke Claven's staff. "This Cardinal Cafe is usually where couples meet," she said. Bernard didn't need to know how his lordship knew about the place. Well, how could one ignore the curiosity of others? Bernard was interested and free enough to whine. "Let Bernard get to work," Lorena said, pulling out the report. "Well, let's start with this month's reports. How interesting. Lovers meet at this cafe?" Why did she start talking about this place? What if Lorena wanted to go there with Elon? But why would she need him in such a romantic place? And how could the main character even think that Lorena had any feelings for him? What an idiot. The blind beast sighed heavily. He was just a burden to everyone. How could anyone love him at all? Fool that he was, he dared to hope his life might have meaning again. That light might appear in it. But no. This girl would never love him. Today, the main character had been able to touch her. It was so exciting and so necessary. When his fingers brushed Lorena's skin, he felt she was close, that everything was okay. Elon painfully squeezed his fingers, letting go of the ghost of hope. She lived a full life, and he only built illusions. She didn't see a man in the beast. Which was not surprising. After all, he was weak and blind. No one could ever truly love a hunted animal. He could only count on pity. The maid quietly knocked on the door of Elon's bedroom. It's time for the master to have dinner. Let Lorena come in. What's on the menu today? Elan wondered. Let the main character guess for himself, she said with a smile. Well, judging by the smell, sausages and spices. That's right, Lorena said. Today Sir Elan has sausages on the grill. Let the handsome young man eat carefully, she said softly. The sausages are very hot. The maid blew gently on the food so as not to cause discomfort to her master. Today, she still couldn't find that damn Karina. She was forced to write her a letter asking for a meeting. But for some reason, her insistent letter remained unanswered. Maybe they'd just kidnapped her and brought her here. Sorry, though she was quite rude and persistent in the letter. This apparently frightened the main character. Something was bothering Lorena. She sighed heavily for the 10th time. How could the young man help her? The maid was sorry for making the master worry unintentionally. Oh, it's nothing, she said, just personal troubles. But just look at her. Instead of working, she was daydreaming and flying in the clouds. Employee of the year indeed. By the way, why was Elan himself in a bad mood? It had started after the visit to the cafe. What's the matter? Elan asked, noticing Lorena's distracted mood. The girl really did want to go to the cafe. Yes, she talked about it, but it was clear she didn't like it there very much. She kept getting distracted. Yes, a fine young man, straight as an arrow, she said. But this is my first time in the capital. I haven't even had a chance to walk around and look properly. So that's it? Eileen nodded. How do you like the capital compared to your native village? It's a new era of civilization, Lorena said, eyes wide. There's even sidewalks. Everything is paved with tiles. Where exactly do you come from? Elan asked. Lorena smiled. There are so many beautiful people here. When I look around, it feels like everyone has stepped right out of a painting. Then maybe we can take a little walk, Elan suggested. And aren't you tired today? Not at all, she replied. Outside, a silver moon lit up the Duchy's mansion. It was big and bright tonight. On the left, beautiful yellow flowers, the size of Elan's palm, were blooming. They only blossomed under moonlight. Mother Alona loved these flowers very much. Indeed, tonight the moon was brighter than ever. And where is that treasured healing flower that's supposed to restore your sight? Lorena asked. That's where the inky beauty hides, Elen said with relief. Luckily, the flower hasn't started to fade yet. It just needs to hold on a couple more days while Karina is still somewhere. Lorena liked the silence and simply enjoyed the blooming flowers. There were so many of them. It was simply fabulous. Elan was glad the maid found joy in such simple things because of him, she never got to go anywhere else. Enough of this nonsense, Lorena said. I'm ready to serve the beautiful young man faithfully, truly, until the end. She might have beaten him for those words if Ilin hadn't been away at the estate. She had snuck off for a walk herself, but Ilin didn't listen to her at all. She was just curious, that's all, still a girl. But that didn't mean she didn't like working for Elan. In fact, she had it pretty good, according to Bernard later. The young man smiled. Apparently, there were still places Lorena wanted to visit. Let me choose, he said. Lorena will go wherever I want. But you can't see anything, she reminded him. Then it's better for you to choose, he smiled. Well, if that's the case, Lorena said, we need to walk in Trail Park. The views there are very picturesque. That's great, Elon agreed. In that case, we'll go tomorrow. Lorena was very grateful for his efficiency. They would have a great time. The park belonged to the Count, who adopted Karina. There, they would finally be able to meet. Suddenly, Elan froze. What was the matter? Why did he stop? If the Duke has other plans tomorrow, Lorena began. It's no big deal, Elan said quickly. We can reschedule our walk. That's not the point at all, Ali admitted. He'd just realized he had absolutely no experience walking with ladies. What a turn of events. For such a wonderful young man with such a beautiful soul and heart. Well, there must be a lot of people in the popular spots of the capital, right? Yes, Elon said. In that case, the blind beast can't lose face or disgrace his duty. They should practice before going out in public, Lorena suggested. Maybe I can help. Elon gallantly extended his hand to her. Her heart beat faster. What was this feeling? They weren't here for long. Lorena was from another world, and this wonderful young man was destined for another girl. Elon didn't want to draw attention to them, so their walk had to look natural. That makes sense, Lorena said carefully, placing her hand into his palm. The greatest warrior straightened his back and walked forward proudly, guiding his companion. Step by step, the girls struggled to keep up with Elon. This was what they meant when they said the strongest swordmaster was far from high society. When they walked side by side, their steps should match, but Lorena was like a chicken chasing a long-legged heron. If the walk is supposed to be natural, Lorena said, you really have to try. She asked Elon to slow down. They needed to get their rhythm right. As soon as her hand rested on Elon's forearm, he froze, wondering what she was doing. This will make walking much more comfortable, Lorena explained. Since you're taller than me, this way our steps will be even. Noticing Elon's awkward pause and bewilderment, she quickly withdrew her hand. Apparently he was uncomfortable, but Elon immediately caught her hand and placed it back. No, Lorena, you're right. It really is much more comfortable this way. A warm smile appeared on his face. Now we should try again and develop our natural walking pace. Meanwhile, Bernard was preparing the picnic. Wow, there's enough food here for a whole horde of knights, he said proudly. And so many delicious things. It's definitely enough for both of them. Bernard straightened up, proud. In fact, he and the entire squad were going on a walk today. Besides, his lordship was going out for only the second time. It's truly a holiday, Bernard said, happy. He had spent the whole night cooking. He was so happy for his master and couldn't wait to see him on a walk. He and Lorena would go together. What? When did the gentleman sneak out of the mansion? Bernard wondered aloud. Let him be a good boy, Lorena said. But Bernard wants to see Elon bask in the sun too. Aye, the maid asked. The manager is worried about the master and happy about his changes. No need to be jealous. It'll be more fun with company. Besides, Elon doesn't need nannies and servants. Well, they can go their separate ways. Okay, Bernard said. We'll go on a picnic together, but let the servants stay nearby. It'll be easier to get to know Karina. All right, Bernard, we'll bring you along. The manager squealed happily and jumped up and down with joy. The welcoming sun reflected off the crystal-clear surface of the lake in the park. Just the perfect day for a promenade. Bernard looked at Elon like a proud mother and waved his hand. Then they went. It was so hot outside, despite it only being spring. Many people had gone out for a walk. The sun was really hot. Lorena fanned the gentleman, but he waved her off. No need, he said. Ooh, today is really an amazing day, Lorena thought. Maybe the plot will finally move forward. Of course, she was very worried about Karina's absence and the discrepancies with the storyline. But everything should work out. She was doing everything right. She wasn't interfering. Suddenly, a wasp flew right over Elon's head. What the hell is that striped insect of such size? Lorena gasped. She wouldn't let it attack the main character. One bite from this flying giant could cause unconsciousness. Grabbing her fan, Lorena prepared to protect Elon. What's that buzzing noise? Apparently a fly is nearby. Oh no, she thought. Elon provoked the monster. It will sting. No, stay away from the handsome young man. Lorena swung her fan and hit the wasp right in front of Ellen's face. The defeated monster flew onto a neighbouring blanket where two ladies sat, frightened. "What kind of abomination is this?" Elon said, shocked as his hair fell back from the wave of Lorina's hand. The girl was so scared, she didn't want to worry a lion at all. She was just trying to scare the monster away. Suddenly, Lorina tripped and fell right on top of Ilan. She definitely felt like she was in a romantic novel. Back in her real world, she would have fallen in the mud, or worse. "Oh, the handsome young man is too close," she exclaimed, blushing. She quickly apologized. Ilan was unharmed. Lorina had been chasing the wasp away and accidentally tripped. She was safe and nothing was hurt. In fact, she fell on Elon. Everything was okay with her. The maid's cheeks flushed bright red. What was this warm feeling spreading through her body? She needed to get ready immediately. This guy was definitely not for her. Lorina jumped up. "Let that impudent wasp fly back here. I'll defeat her." They needed to change the subject immediately. It was too embarrassing. Perhaps the main character should enslave the hearts of girls with just one look, Bernard mused. He had worked for a long time on the sandwiches. "If you hold it like this, you won't get dirty," he said, carefully. A few hours later, at the Harrington estate, where the main character was supposed to live, the maid named Lorina wanted to speak with Miss Karina. Would they let her see Karina? Since Lorina had no documents, she arrived late. Their picnic had dragged on longer than expected. Lorina planned to go to the dress shop. Elon might go with her, but then everyone would think they were a couple. It was Lorina who wanted to see Miss Karina. "That's right," she said. "I owe her a lot. The mistress will be glad to see Lorina." A blatant lie, but it was impossible now since Lady Karina was not at the mansion. "How is that? Then where is she?" Lorina asked. A man in a tailcoat cleared his throat. "The maid should know," he said. "The main character is currently at the Imperial Palace, so she can't find time for a personal meeting." Meanwhile, Karina admired the view from the Imperial Palace. The scenery was breathtaking, but the lady herself was even more beautiful. She turned around, blushing with embarrassment. For His Highness, such compliments were routine, weren't they? After all, Karina was the adopted daughter of the Earl of Harrington, the Countess Harrington. And the Crown Prince said this to every lady of the court. It had always been that way. "Karina, don't look at me like that," the Crown Prince said softly. "It hurts me." The future ruler gently kissed her hand, throwing out compliments as casually as breathing. Crown Prince Xavier Oda Constance never imagined he would say such things from the bottom of his heart. For some reason, Karina didn't quite believe the future ruler's words. But what was stopping her from changing that? Perhaps if Miss Karina called the Crown Prince by his first name, it would be enough to win his trust. Lady Harrington cannot call the heir to the throne by his first name, Karina thought. Is this a refusal to obey a royal command? The future emperor gently squeezed her chin. "Come on, Karina. It's that simple. Xavier is such an easy name to say, and from your lips, it sounds beautiful." With one swift motion, the Crown Prince pulled her closer and kissed her in the rays of the setting sun. Karina's emerald eyes sparkled with a new feeling awakening inside her. "Let sweet Karina remember that when we are alone, she should address me by my name." "As you wish," she whispered. Their conversation was suddenly interrupted by the Crown Prince's assistant, who hurriedly approached. "What is it?" Xavier asked. The young man nervously leaned in and whispered into his ear. Xavier's face immediately changed. "The Crown Prince has an urgent matter to attend to and must leave. Miss Karina, we will meet again tomorrow at the same place." Xavier kissed Karina's forehead. "Goodbye. From now on, Lady Harrington must stop calling me His Highness, or I will have to punish her." After the Crown Prince left the balcony, Karina covered her face in embarrassment. It was her first kiss. Her cheeks flushed pink. How exciting and pleasant it all was. This must be what true love feels like. Karina felt it deep in her heart. The name of her other half was Xavier. Everything was lost when Lady Karina was adopted. The Countess had been so happy, and now even more so. Very soon young Karina would marry a member of the imperial family. She was stunned. What about Laura and Elon? Everything around Karina seemed shrouded in impenetrable darkness. Everything was lost. She was doomed. How could this stupid heroine suddenly fall in love with the heir to the throne? It was disgusting. But how was this possible? Their heroine had broken the rules of the plot. The ending would be different. Poor Elon would never see the light. Would never be cured without love. How could Karina even look him in the face now, knowing he could not be saved? Finally, the maid deigned to return. "Ooh, remember the sun, here comes a ray," Bernard said. "Why hasn't the young gentleman gone to bed yet? It's high time for him to rest." Lorena was also doing well. She promised she wouldn't be gone so long, but she had gotten lost on the way back. "Why didn't you take a carriage then?" "You need to save money," Lorena replied. "Be careful." The girl was going to put Elon to bed now. The maid led the main character to his bed and carefully sat him down. He still needed something. Maybe she could read to him again? Was Elon having trouble sleeping again? Should she bring the same book? Outside, a large number of soldiers had gathered in the populated wasteland. The enemy army matched theirs. Pooh's infantry consisted of 11,000 foot soldiers and 5,000 cavalry, and there were 6,000 artillery soldiers and 800 guns. Well, and bedtime stories? How can you even fall asleep to this? Some soldiers went on the offensive, others moved elsewhere. Then snoring was heard in the room. The maid plopped down on the beast's bed. Iloen carefully covered her with a blanket. Apparently, she was very tired after the whole day. Let her have a good rest. The main character tried to pull the book out from under the maid's cheek, but failed. Okay, so be it, he thought. The handsome hero lay down next to her and began to listen. The sound of her breathing was so peaceful and pleasant. Elon felt he was not alone in his endless darkness. Lorena had said today that if Elon accompanied her to the dress shop, everyone would think they were a couple. Bernard immediately caught Lorena and said, "That's right. In general, the gentleman has spent too much time outside the house. It's time for him to go home." But the main character wanted to spend a little more time with Lorena. Bose carried and dragged the young man home like a capricious child. Why didn't she want to take the young man with her? Apparently, Lorena was ashamed to appear in such places with Lilon. The main character carefully felt the sleeping girl's hand. He only wanted to straighten her blanket, but accidentally touched her palm. Everything inside Lilin turned over just from that touch. It required so much courage. She had become a guide for a feeble, blind man, and this tore the young man apart. How could a blind beast be with her? How could she even want that? There was a knock on the door of the main character's bedroom. It was Bernard again. His lordship took up his question. "What are you doing here at such a late hour?" The gentleman asked to bring him fresh tea, since the light was still burning in his chambers. It was his order. Luckily, there were no other servants here. The master would get into trouble if word got out that a maid was sleeping in his bedroom, and his lordship knew this very well. Why doesn't the gentleman simply make Lorena his favourite? Bernard scoffed. She is just a servant, without family or surname. For noble lords, she is just a slave. The manager immediately shut his mouth and never dared say such a thing again. Whatever Bernard was to Elon, he wouldn't forgive him for this. Bernard nodded, understanding the mistake, and promised it wouldn't happen again. Now the manager asked for forgiveness and prepared to return to work. How could you even allow such a thought, to make Lorena your lover? She is not a thing, the protagonist thought, placing his hand gently on the girl's fingers. If only she shared his feelings, then he would find a way to resolve this issue in a noble way. The blind beast was near, guarding the sleep of the sleeping heroine. He would never hurt her. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the crown prince was awake in his private chambers like a nocturnal predator. Today's report had clearly unsettled him. "So, these are the same people?" he asked sharply. "Yes, Your Highness," his assistant replied. The elderly couple who found Lena were kneeling before the heir to the throne. It's a great honor for commoners to appear before the son of the empire. The crown prince waved his glass of wine dismissively. "Let them rise. I have one important question for these witnesses. They will answer everything I need to know." Xavier was counting on the couple since they were familiar with the girl. "That's right," the assistant confirmed. "They saw this poor lady about 6 months ago, unconscious and covered in blood on the riverbank. They let her stay for the night, but she didn't want to linger and left for Kruger Castle. They haven't seen her since. If commoners dared to lie, the guards would cut off their heads." "They wouldn't dare lie to me," Xavier said coldly. "That's enough for today," he commanded, raising his hand. "These commoners have already helped. Let the guards escort them out quietly." "As Your Highness pleases," the assistant nodded. Xavier's eyes flashed with determination. Alicia had survived that fateful night, and this time she wouldn't escape him. He would find her. Soon. Oda was the name of the first ruler of Constant, a divine title passed down through generations since the state's founding. According to legend, the first emperor died and ascended to become one of the gods. He prophesied that in every generation a child would be born in his likeness. Children with black hair and red eyes became known as the descendants of God Odor. Their bodies exceeded human limits. Masters of the sword, resistant to disease and poison, aging almost imperceptibly. No one imagined the terrible fate awaiting the greatest descendant of Odor Elon. Elon, the strongest warrior, led his squad into battle, but it was a trap. A special poison was sprayed into the air, unavoidable and deadly. His faithful horse collapsed instantly, struck by a dangerous toxin. Then, Elon felt as if acid was burning his eyes. The pain was unbearable. Loyal soldiers rushed to his side, but no one could help. On that horrific day, the protagonist lost his sight and the gifts granted by the first emperor. Every treatment was tried, healers, shamans, priests, but nothing worked. No one in the empire could cure the heir to the throne. Broken and weak, Elon decided to end his life. But the beast could not kill itself. Bernard tied his hands every night to prevent self-harm. Feeling sorry for Bernard, who had travelled the world searching for a cure, Elon stopped trying to die, but didn't want to live either. Rumours spread that a wild beast howled every night in Duke Claven's mansion. The protagonist opened his eyes. Lorena had thrown her leg over him and snored contentedly in his bed. How long did Elon sleep like that? He wondered. He had only just lain down a minute ago, but was already haunted by nightmares. Lorena, still deeply asleep, stretched contentedly and began to open her eyes. She had slept well, but wait, where was she? She had spent the entire night in the protagonist's room. "Good morning," Elon muttered. "How did Elon sleep?" "Not very well. Lorena sleeps restlessly." It was worth waking her up, but when Elon tried, she just rolled over. I hope she doesn't snore too loudly, he thought. Lorena had fallen asleep in the bed of a young man who already had a lover, even if he didn't know about her yet. Suddenly the maid rushed in. "Master needs something," she said. "What's the expression on Lorena's face now?" Elon asked. "Sleepy and deflated," the maid answered. Her cheeks were flushed with worry. "Well, she's already embarrassed. She just wants to collapse." Lorena's cheeks were still chocolate brown, reflecting her dark skin. "If the gentleman needs anything, just call. Lorena needs to recover from the night," the maid added, and hurried out, closing the door behind her. Inside, Lorena was filled with anger and frustration. "As a génial. What the hell am I doing? What a fool. she muttered, pounding on the door. Why hadn't she gone to her own bed? After 7 years, boys and girls should sleep in separate rooms. Even though she was exhausted, Lorena angrily hit her head against the wall. A trickle of blood ran down her forehead. We need to find Karina, she thought. Karina had already fallen in love with a minor character who, according to the plot, was supposed to end up with nothing. Originally, the protagonist didn't even notice the Crown Prince. What had changed? Maybe Karina could bring Ilon and the Crown Prince together, and then maybe both would fall in love. After all, they were the main characters and were meant to be together. But wait. Something was definitely wrong with that damn Crown Prince. He was the main villain, immoral, cruel, and a freak. She should have read the book properly. Now, she still had to confront this secret villain. First, we need to deal with Ilon. Today is his day off. Lorena found herself in the Harrington reception area. Of course, she lied again about going shopping. The main goal was to bring the main characters together. It's okay, she thought. She had carried trays when she lived in the village, even if it wasn't proper etiquette. Karina would take care of the arriving guest herself. The servants shouldn't worry unnecessarily. And here came the main character. Lorena had been waiting a long time for this meeting. Miss Harrington must have been surprised by her sudden visit, and curious. Why did the guest tell the Count that she was Lady Karina's doctor? However, the main character didn't remember anything about that. The girl's name is Lena, the assistant explained. She came all the way here, and Karina can't even remember her. In that case, maybe the main character would remember the fortune teller she met on the main square. Does Lorena really know that fortune teller? She was her grandmother, the assistant said. What's she talking about? Lorena needed to gain Karina's trust. The grandmother had dementia. People often feared and offended her, and no one loved her. But the day before she died, she said that Miss Karina had given her 3 silver coins. Karina had no money left, but gave everything she had so the fortune teller could eat and tell her a fortune about her future. A new life awaits the kind girl, the fortune teller said. A great and passionate love with a dark-haired man. Thanks to Karina's kindness, the grandmother left the mortal world with a smile, holding those coins to her chest as a memory of a ray of light. Lorena wanted to predict Karina's future as a token of gratitude, but if it wasn't a burden, she had one request. To meet a man. It's a matter of life and death, she said. Karina could change someone's life again, just like she did with her grandmother. Karina was a ray of sunshine in the darkness. But Karina was engaged now. She can't do that, Lorena thought. It would put her in an awkward position. And, as the grandmother predicted, her chosen one and true love had dark hair. This engagement was important, not just for Karina, but for the Empire. There should be no rumours after all. Karina would become a member of the imperial family. The main character would gladly help, but she couldn't. Oh, it's a secret? Well, since Karina told me her secret, she might as well name her love the Crown Prince. At the Harrington house, they told her the truth. Did Lady Karina really love her fiancé? Yes, the assistant said. She loves the Crown Prince with all her heart. That was the problem. Karina's marriage had no political subtext. She was marrying for love. Lorena could feel how deeply the main character was in love with the Crown Prince, the villain. How had she fallen for him so quickly? Lorena couldn't change Karina's feelings, for her own good, but she couldn't leave Ilon behind. What will happen to the protagonist, she wondered. He didn't deserve this. The maid didn't know about Lady Karina's situation and had asked for something unacceptable. She would simply tell Lady Karina's fortune. The main character would be happy with that. But Lena wasn't so sure. After the fortune-telling, the maid left the Harrington residence, leaving the main character deep in thought. Her words were very different from the grandmother's. It was easier to believe the old woman's joyful prediction. The first time Karina met the Crown Prince was in the Imperial Palace, where she dropped her scarf and Xavier picked it up and handed it to her. He then escorted Lady Harrington to the palace. His lordship was surprised. He had never heard Karina's name before. The future ruler couldn't forget the name of such a lovely lady. That prediction popped into his head. It was that meeting, destined by fate, that marked their beginning. The maid called Lady Harrington downstairs. "Come quickly," she said. "What's the matter?" "The Crown Prince has arrived at the Harrington estate and is seeking a meeting with Lady Karina." The heir to the throne was tired of waiting for Karina's visit to the palace. If she had known, she would have prepared better. Xavier had warned her he would punish her if she called him by his title in private. What kind of punishment? The Crown Prince bit her with greedy, demanding lips. This was the Crown Prince's punishment. Karina might even get used to it. Why does the main character look at the young man like that? Is it too hackneyed and predictable? "The fruit of your love will be rejected by society at first," the Crown Prince said. "But don't worry, her child will rule the world. Let her take everything fate gives her and follow the call of her heart. It will lead her to a better life." Karina wanted to be with Xavier, that was certain. After such words, the Crown Prince would no longer let Karina go. "You shouldn't let that maid's words influence your mind. That's a mistake. Zami is her true destiny." There would be 2 men in Karina's life, both of noble blood. If she sensed something was wrong, she shouldn't be afraid to leave this path. Then she would have everything she wanted. When Xavier has a rival, the main character would not even glance at him. She would never push away her destiny. There is no girl named Lorena on the client list. But she said she buys dresses here. There are no other women's dress shops in the city. The main character felt struck by lightning. Lorena had lied more than once. Why would she do that? The blind beast rushed away from this painful truth. Bernard didn't understand where the maid could have gone, or what else she could need. The main character sighed heavily. He would like to know too, but, alas, they could only search the area now that his lordship had started the search. "No need," Bernard said. "She came back very late last night, lied again today, and disappeared somewhere." Meanwhile, the girl was returning to the beast's estate, unsure of what to do next. Everything had gone wrong. She was certain that as soon as she met Karina, everything would be decided. Eilon was exactly as described in the novel, but what was wrong with the main character? How was the girl supposed to unravel this tangled mess of passions? And how could she possibly find her way back home? She needed to calm down and come up with a new plan, especially since the circumstances had changed. The magical flower was set to wither tomorrow. Would the most beautiful young man, noble in body and soul, never regain his sight? The flower had to be used. But how? Lorena didn't understand anything about it. She wished she had learned this from the main character earlier. At least then she might have had a chance to help poor Eilon. Instead, she was still trying to recruit the main character. Suddenly it started raining. What a day. Exhausted, Lorena thought. I need to get back to the mansion, pour myself some tea and regain my peace. Only then will the solution come. The Claven estate was close now. She quickened her pace. Approaching the main entrance, she nearly collided with the main character. "Why is Eilon standing out in the rain?" she asked. "Why is the gentleman out here without an umbrella? He'll catch a cold." The main character ignored her questions, focusing instead on finding out where Lorena had been. She sneezed loudly, soaking wet and clearly sick. The main character sighed heavily, realizing the questions for today would have to wait. The handsome young man carefully lifted her, his warm palm resting on her waist. In an instant, Lorena was in his arms. What just happened? She wondered. How is this even possible? Then, the truth came out. Eilon was not blind after all. Yes, she could walk on her own, but the main character carried her to the bathroom and gently placed her on the floor. "Let Lorena take a hot bath," the main character insisted. "She needs to warm up or she'll get even sicker." When the maid protested, the main character slammed the door shut. "This is Duke Clavin's private bathroom," Lorena whispered awkwardly. Well, since the wonderful hero himself brought her here, she doesn't need to be told twice, she thought, settling into the bath. Elon seemed so troubled. Maybe something happened while she was gone. This was a rare moment for Lorena to enjoy a luxurious bath, but the question of what to do remained. Elon relied on her, and the thought of him blind and without Karina was unbearable. Even worse, Lorena was starting to care for Elon far more deeply than she expected. Everything was so complicated. The manager struggled to hold a tray of tea as Elion, still soaking wet and shivering, finally returned. Apparently he had decided walking in the pouring rain was a good idea. When asked why, Elion merely smiled, knowing Bernard was worried about him. Elion let the maid Lina handle his belongings while he used the bathroom. The protagonist left Bernard's questions unanswered as usual. At this rate, the manager might lose his mind, and every nerve cell. Elon was acting like a child and could easily get sick. The next morning, the maid brought breakfast to the protagonist's private quarters. Today was the last day. The day the magical flower would wither, and with it, the last chance to cure Elon. The girl had to find a solution before the day ended. Elon looked like a zombie, having not slept at all. The young man was weighed down by his thoughts. "What's bothering you?" she asked, urging him to share. Elon hesitated, but then gathered courage to ask a question about what she thought of him. The maid, ever ready to help her master, answered anything he wanted. The protagonist's heart skipped a beat. What should she say? The handsome hero's cheeks flushed. Elon wanted to know the truth about himself. He really counted on it. Lorena admired Elon deeply. He was the most noble, wonderful person she had ever known. Though he bore great pain, he did so with honor and dignity. She truly admired him. After that heartfelt moment, they began breakfast. The protagonist clutched the cutlery, ready to ask Bernard one more question. Where had Lorena been the day before? The maid's answer was less than satisfying. She wandered the mall all day and then met some friends, was not a good enough explanation. But the maid had discovered something crucial. A way to restore Elon's sight. Lorena decided to find out everything herself to confirm it was true. She laughed at the maid's story, but Elon's calm voice interrupted. Such a cure simply did not exist. Even His Highness had tried and failed. Still, Lorena had managed to find a rare plant, a magical flower, said to relieve any ailment if brewed properly. Similar remedies had been tried on Elon before. The recipes must be somewhere. She would ask Beron. Elon was willing to drink the potion, but Lorena shouldn't have too many hopes. He wouldn't drink anything from just anyone. Swallowing her fear, Lorena placed her hand gently on his fingers, ready to sacrifice everything to restore his sight. Their hearts raced together in that moment. Lorena swore to the young man that she would restore his sight no matter the cost, even if it meant harming herself. She squeezed his hand tightly, pouring all her feelings and hopes into that touch. The main character held her still, savouring the moment. Elon pulled his hand back, reminding himself not to fantasize. The decoction might not work. What saddened Lorena most was how grateful Lillian was for her care and devotion, even if the cure failed. Breakfast had to finish quickly. Elon had business to attend to. Today, he would visit a tailor, meaning he planned to change his wardrobe. But the visit wasn't for him. It was for Lorena. She had never been to a tailor or bought a dress, though she wanted to. Besides, the gentleman paid her well enough. Lorena had only one dress to wear outside. Such a thing was dishonourable for Duke Claven as a nobleman, and the maid was determined to fix that. After breakfast, they went to the city's only boutique. Emily, the owner, was grateful for his lordship's visit. "How can I help you?" she asked. Duke Claven wished to order several dresses for the lady. One dress would have been enough, but Lorina would have 5. 1 for each season. The boutique was known for exorbitant prices, and the clothes would be returned to the employer afterward. For a simple maid without documents or a name, 5 outfits were luxury. Lorina protested. She was a servant, not a lady-in-waiting, but Alien insisted. She would wear these dresses even if she washed the floors in them. Suddenly, the bell on the boutique door rang, an unwelcome presence. Why would a blind man go to such a place? A nasty voice sneered. This was the Crown Prince Xavier, heir to the throne, infamous for his rotten character. Even the Empress was said to be more ruler than he. Xavier's stench seemed to fill the room. He had no idea Elon had plans beyond this mansion, despite his blindness. The minor character bared his teeth in envy. He had always envied Elon. "What's going on there? Where's that noise coming from?" someone whispered. Emily said she'd check while the girls waited. The boutique owner returned and bowed. "Apologies, I was busy with a customer." Xavier sneered at Elon. "So, a blind animal can still pick clothes. Why does Elon need this? It'd be better if the wounded beast stayed in his estate and didn't waste strength." Elon, ignoring the insult, pushed the brat away with a slight motion. "Worry about your own worthlessness," Elon said coldly. "You only got your job because I was poisoned." Not everyone was destined for greatness, and Xavier's envy showed plainly. "How funny it is for Mr. Hulon to speak like that to the Crown Prince," Xavier sneered. Elon's head turned toward his guard. "He speaks as a pathetic, envious man deserves," Elon said. Though blind, Elon was still mighty and unmatched in strength and swordsmanship. The guard was warned not to provoke him. Xavier tried to break into the fitting room where Lorina was changing, but Elon intercepted his wrist with lightning speed. Even predators aren't that fast. The villain froze in horror. Elon's fortitude, not his eyes, made him better. Xavier could never understand that. Plunder gathered. The Crown Prince had started a fight with a blind man. How cowardly. Xavier quickly retreated. "Let them all pick clothes for his chosen one," he spat, fleeing after the humiliated master. Elon chose the finest outfits without even touching the fabric. The Crown Prince's visit to the boutique was unlikely any time soon. After several grueling hours, Duke Claven's carriage was filled with new dresses. The silence inside was heavy. Suddenly, a knock at the door. The presence of that spawn, Xavier, made Lorina ready to tear him apart, even if it meant prison. Bernard agreed Xavier was a degenerate, unworthy even of mentioning Elon's name. No one cared about that brat at the estate. Lorina and Bernard swore to deal with him. She would knock him out, and Bernard would run him over with the carriage. Enough talk. What were Lorina and Bernard discussing? Recipes for decoctions. Lorina had found a way to cure Elon. Elon heard the words "rip open the belly" and thought they were insulting his intelligence. But insulting members of the imperial family was serious. Still, Bernard and Lorina were loyal subjects to the greatest warrior in the empire. If only Lorina were dressed properly, she would have given that coward a beating and emerged victorious, trophy in hand. Xavier's rotten tongue. Just then, cold rain began to fall again. Bernard brought Elon his umbrella, while Lorina waited in the carriage, still wet from yesterday's downpour. Why is the weather so bad? The heavy expression on the main character's face was unmistakable. "What's wrong, my lord?" Lorina asked. "Nothing to worry about," Elon said softly. He had twisted his ankle on the wet floor and was leaning on the maid. He didn't want to embarrass her. Lorina thought, let this moment last forever. A salty tear rolled down Ilan's cheek, but he quickly wiped it away. Tears fell onto his hands as he realized he needed to get home. The carriage roof was leaking, and Elon told Miss Lena he would go to bed early, leaving her free. "Damn Crown Prince," Lorina muttered. "Where did this rotten bastard come from? Such a man will rule the empire, who hates the country and its people. It's a death sentence for the empire." The nonsense had to be stopped. How dare this little rat insult the main character? Suddenly, Lorena remembered. The flower. Today was the last day. She almost forgot the most important thing. She rushed to pick the flower before it was too late. Karina was lucky. The flower usually withered as soon as it rained, but in Elon's garden it had survived much longer, as if waiting for her. But now the rain continued and things weren't going according to plan. Was she too late? Elon was in so much pain and hardship, Lorena was ready to give everything just to make him happy. She fell to her knees before the plant. No! The flower began to wither, its magical glow fading. What have I done? Tears streamed down her cheeks. She blamed herself, but took a deep breath and plucked the flower from the ground. She would not give up, not on Elon. Lorena swore to the main character she would help him at any cost. Bursting into the kitchen, she started banging pots and pans. There was no time. The medicinal decoction had to be made quickly, before the flower fully wilted. No one was left to help. The cook had gone home. Only one fire burned, in the Duke's private chambers. Lorena rushed in, apologizing to the master later. She needed the fire to brew the potion and was willing to face any consequences, even madness. She placed a vessel on the fire, threw in the flower petals and hoped it would work. She had no idea if she was doing it right. She should have prepared better. Lorena closed herself off, crying quietly. She couldn't let Elon down. He didn't deserve this. The main character approached. Lorena didn't want to explain, but confessed she needed to make the decoction to help Elon. She was scared and felt she might have ruined everything. But the main character comforted her. There was no need to blame herself, yet. Elon shouldn't risk drinking something uncertain. Lorena didn't even know how to prepare it properly. It was an order from her employer. Lorena had tried so hard for Lilon. This was the least she could do. Offer him her brew. Tears froze in her violet eyes, as she wished nothing more than for Lillian's happiness. Her hands trembled, barely able to hold the vessel. The brew looked terrible and likely tasted worse. Yet the main character drank it all at once. What would Elon do? If the girl had made a mistake, could he risk his health like this? The young man smiled broadly. Elon had already said he was willing to drink anything from her hands. It was enough for the beast that Lorena cared so deeply. Her heart raced. It was a turning point, a hope for light in the darkness. But the end was not near. This was only the beginning. Meanwhile, in the imperial palace, the crown prince hurled a glass of wine against the wall. After several bottles, furniture went flying across the room in a furious storm. That damned beast, Elon, wore a smug grin that never left his face. Blind as he was, Elon was still better than Xavier. And today, Elon was happy. How dare he be happy? This infuriated the crown prince to no end. Elon continued to drive Xavier mad. Even though the heir to the throne could no longer see, the scarlet eyes of Odor still haunted him. Xavier had always admired eyes the colour of the sky, a calm, endless blue, because the sky rises above everything else. This colour suited Xavier like no other, but the true descendants of God bore scarlet eyes. This was why, since childhood, Xavier had been considered a scoundrel. Despite being the Emperor's blood son, he was never recognized by the gods. That meant Xavier was weak, unworthy. A crown prince without scarlet eyes was a disgrace to the dynasty. For the first time, a descendant of Odor was born in a collateral line. How could this be? Xavier was not worthy of Odor's recognition. The day Elon Clavon, the child who inherited the eyes of a god, was born, Xavier's world shattered. The entire court and nobility demanded the heir to the throne be a true, worthy descendant of Odor. They begged the emperor to adopt Elon and name him successor. Elon was the strongest in all generations. They must protect the greatness of the empire. Everyone knew Xavier was cowardly and rotten. The Crown Prince dismissed it as a half-forgotten legend. Everyone had decided to elect a new emperor instead of Xavier. Even his mother was sorry. She never wanted him born with such eyes. It was the scarlet eyes that drove the false Crown Prince crazy. Elle was his death sentence. Then why had Xavier blinded this beast? Yet Elle had escaped that fate and still enjoyed life. The blind beast was still better than Xavier. Everyone knew it, though no one dared admit it. His Highness summoned the guards and closed the door behind them. Elle apparently had a lover. Xavier must know everything about this girl. It would be done. The Crown Prince wanted to strip the beast of everything and crush him into a hell from which he would never escape. The drunken, envious Crown Prince gulped more wine. The beast had no right to happiness. That very night, the protagonist awoke in unbearable hellish pain. A roar echoed through the estate. The beast was crying out in agony. Blood poured from Elon's eye sockets. The servants rushed in. Bernard asked in horror, "What has happened to our master? His eyes, they burn so much." Elon writhed in pain. Scarlet streams of blood flowed down his cheeks. What has the girl done? She won't survive if anything happens to him, especially if it's her fault. We still have some painkillers left. Let Lorina bring them here immediately. This was the first time Erlan experienced such torment. Could it be that the main character suffered this agony because of the maid? Bernard carefully covered his master with a blanket. Illilan took a sleeping pill and a painkiller. This would help him rest a little and regain strength. Bernard turned to Lorina. "We need to talk." The maid must have been terrified for the master. Bernard was worried, but not scared. This happened often, but Lorina had never seen anything like this before. This all started before Lorina began working here. Whenever they tried to cure Elon's sight, he always endured unbearable pain. Hence the nickname, the Howling Beast. They had tried everything to restore his vision, but every attempt was met with furious screams of agony. Elon had even tried to scratch out his own eyes. Since then he was known as the Blind Beast. No medicine could help him. When Lorina arrived, Ilan had lost all hope. He knew the consequences, that he would suffer hellish pain. Yet for her sake, he drank the potion without asking what exactly she had put in it. Lorina should not blame herself. After all, she tried, for the sake of his lordship. But she couldn't shake the guilt. How could she be so careless? She had given the master a concoction she barely understood, something untested and nameless. Bernard grew suspicious of Lorina despite her obvious care. Was it just a pretense to gain trust and harm Lillian? The truth would be decided when Lillian regained consciousness. The master would decide Lorina's fate. Lorina was ready. For now, Bernard would watch over Leon, and the maid must wait. How can you be so stupid and useless? Bernard thought bitterly. Lorina had caused Elon such pain. The master had been poisoned many times before, but this was something else entirely. Tormented, Lorina wandered until habit led her to Aelin's chambers. Since she was already here, she might as well ask for forgiveness. Bernard stopped her. Elon wasn't sleeping. Better not disturb him now. Lorina understood, but it hurt to see Lillian suffer so. She never imagined he'd endure such pain. Still, she believed Elon would see again, if only she could cure him, take away his pain and make his life bright. If the potion worked, the Duke might even make her mistress of the estate. But that wasn't her goal. She only wanted to help. The next morning, a scream rang out across the Earl of Harrington's estate. "Miss Karina is fine. What happened?" the maid nervously asked. The Crown Prince, Xavier, had been busy all day. He hadn't sent Karina any notes. Karina looked unwell. The main character fell to his knees, emerald eyes frozen in horror. How could Xavier do this to Karina, his true love? After they spent the night together, Xavier had ignored her for 4 days straight. No, it can't be. Karina's just imagining it. The Crown Prince is very busy." The maid prepared the carriage, voice steely. Karina immediately rushed to the Imperial Palace, the Crystal Palace, the Crown Prince's chambers. Few people worked in the Duke's palace. It was hard to keep track of Sir Elon. He rarely left the estate. Why did the heir to the throne call this a guard failure and call it an investigation? Lorena's identity was unknown, hired through an agency, no records of her previous employment. "Let the spies continue their work," Xavier ordered. A woman with no documents, a dark horse, a criminal, a prisoner of war, or even a runaway gypsy. Curious for Elon's tastes, probably a concubine. The Crown Prince changed his mind. "No surveillance. Bring that maid here personally. I want to see what the animal does when his favourite toy is taken away." There was a knock on His Majesty's private chambers. The butler reported, "Xavier is busy, but Miss Karina requests an audience." "Karina Harrington?" Xavier frowned, barely remembering her face. "Reject the request. By my order, everyone out." Xavier stepped on a portrait of Karina, scanning her description. Long blonde locks, ivory skin, violet eyes. Her features seemed familiar. Blue eyes flashed maniacally in his mind. The villain eagerly awaited their meeting. "How is Sir Elon?" Xavier demanded. "The gentleman is in an incomprehensible state. Usually pain and bleeding stop after 2 or 3 days. But Elon's been suffering for 6 days. Something new? It's all because Lorena brewed that potion incorrectly. His pain may never end. If Karina had brewed it, Elon would have recovered already. The master has one request. Buy chocolate from the Cardinal's cafe. The one she and the maid shared. Bernard trusted Lorena. She rushed to get the chocolate, but suddenly stopped and turned back. "Let Elon be patient a little longer. I'll be back soon." Bernard smiled. She's like a soldier on an important mission. Elon had sent her away so she wouldn't witness his suffering. At the cafe, a red-haired girl in a white robe hid her face under a hood. Elon hadn't eaten in a week. It would be good if he could at least eat some chocolate. Lorena's return was urgent. As she stepped onto the main square, someone grabbed her hand. She spun around in fear, expecting trouble. But it was Iris. Iris took off her hood. Lorena didn't recognize her. Why did Iris know her? Lorena was in trouble again. She'd only gone out for chocolate. Iris's bitter tears fell as she held Lorena's hand, promising to help restore her memory. 2 more figures in white robes approached. Sectarians? What did they want from a simple servant? This was the sanctuary of the main temple in the capital, where priests were trained to hear the voice of God. Among them was Alicia Uther, known as the true diamond of the noble Uther family. Alicia entered the temple at age 3 and led 100 believers. Her beauty and saintly reputation were unmatched. Lorena wasn't Alicia. The priests were mistaken, but the holy power insisted this was Lady Alicia. Lorena shivered. Was that static electricity? Or just stress? Alicia certainly didn't remember anything. Iris squeezed her hand again. "I'll help you regain your memory." Elon grew tired of waiting for chocolate. That was enough impressions for one day. Lorena had to return to Elon. She had obligations here. Fate had determined it. Suddenly, a middle-aged woman with violet eyes appeared, resembling Lorena. Tears came to her eyes. She hugged Lorena, believing she had found her lost daughter. The woman prayed for this reunion. Alicia was alive and safe, despite her lost memory. Lorena wanted to know if the temple servants could prove she was Alicia. This was crucial to her future. The setting sun's rays broke through the window of Elon's bedroom. The blind beast let out a dull roar of pain. This time the agony was unlike any before, worse than ever. Bernard entered. The pain has lessened, but he's very thirsty. He's never suffered so much before. Ilan sighed deeply. Where is Lorena? Bernard bit his lip. She's deliberately staying longer. It's hard to hear the beast screams all day. I'll send 3 people to the cafe. If she's not there, they'll search nearby. And Elon lay in his soft bed, a refuge from the outside world, writhing in pain, drowning in darkness and loneliness. He missed Lorena's care, but also wanted to protect her from seeing his suffering. In the past, the greatest warrior would have seen concern as pity and insult. Elon didn't understand then how care was a sign of love. He could never have imagined needing someone's care so badly. If only Lorena would come back soon. Elon was waiting for her with all his heart. Meanwhile, the girl wandered through the vast temple, accompanied by her new acquaintances. Figures from her character's forgotten past. The temple was enormous and majestic, with thick bindweed creeping over everything. Where had these women brought her? What kind of place was this? There was absolutely nothing in her fragmented memories about it. Alicia decided to follow Iris. She needed proof to believe their words. The red-haired temple attendant held up a mirror and asked Alicia to remove her clothes for a moment. What? What kind of request is this? We've only known each other for less than a day, Alicia protested. Iris, at least invite me to dinner first. Iris sighed impatiently but began to pull off her own robe. They need to see your back, she said. Let them explain first. Enough with the empty chatter. The motherly woman held the mirror up to Alicia's shoulder blade, revealing a mark. What is that? A tattoo? Iris exhaled heavily. It's not a tattoo. She took off her own robe and exposed her shoulder. Alicia examined the back of her new acquaintance closely. The mark was the same. A special scar. A priest's mark. A sign of recognition by God. This mark appeared in that area like a birthmark when a priest chosen by God underwent their initiation ceremony. Laura had no idea this plotline even existed. She had taken over this character's body a year ago, but only now was she learning about its original owner. After all, she'd been too busy helping the main character to dig deeper. Lady Alicia had managed to remember at least something. Apparently, she really was the Alicia everyone talked about. But this could only mean one thing. The real Alicia had died. So Laura took over her body. And besides, Laura definitely did not hear the voice of God. She was not the great Alicia. Iris was also a priestess, which meant she could hear the divine voice. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been admitted to the Hoodoo temple. If Laura was Alicia, then she should be able to hear the divine voice too, but she couldn't. Why had she lost her memory? How did she end up on the riverbank? An elderly couple had found her and nursed her back to health. This couldn't be Alicia. She had been found on the banks of the Liron River. What about their faces? Laura wondered. Lady Alicia had been on her way to Groves for the weekend when her crew and escort were attacked. The attackers were brutal, killing every single member on the spot. How were they killed? Laura asked. It looked like a deliberate assassination attempt, militant style. Iris explained. Laura definitely found herself in a romantic novel, but she didn't remember any of this. She wasn't much of a reader anyway. The lake was a week's carriage ride from here, and the road was dangerous. Judging by the dates, Laura took over Alicia's body around the time the real Alicia disappeared. Maybe she wasn't Alicia at all, but she had seen the mark herself. After contemplating the sacred sign, how could she deny it? "You shout like that?" Iris asked softly. "You've learned enough for today. It's time for you to return to the estate." Of course, Laura wanted to know more, but she didn't want to worry Elon. The motherly woman sighed heavily, looking at Laura with concern. "Where has your little girl been all this time? We searched for Alicia all over the Empire and never found her. In the end, everyone decided she drowned in the mountain river. She was just a maid at the estate of the Duke of Claven. Iris added. By the way, she was making a good living. Today she went out on his behalf, so it's time for her to return. How can Alicia not understand that her real home is here? The woman whispered. It's her destiny and duty. No matter how many times they said it, Lyra knew she would never abandon the main character. No matter the cost, it was clear to them both. The mother squeezed Lyra's shoulders tightly. She cannot return to the mansion of Duke Claven. Meanwhile, deep into the night in the Empire, the question remained, where was this irresponsible girl? The manager was busy preparing the evening service in the kitchen. Inside, his poor master Elle was writhing in unbearable pain that refused to subside. Though the agony gave Elle brief moments of rest and sleep, no matter how strong his lordship was, if this pain continued, Elle feared he might lose his mind. Bernard, the manager, had seen many hardships, but even he was deeply scared and pained for his master. Then suddenly the roar of the wounded beast, the signal of another attack, stopped. The manager hurried to his master, but no matter how much Bernard searched the city, he could not find Lorena. When would she finally return? After all, the maid had been supposed to visit the cafe on the main square. So where had she gone? Bernard looked guiltily at his young master. He had nothing to offer to please him, and Lorena was still nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, Bernard heard a voice. Ilan's voice. The shouts had stopped. The protagonist lifted his head, and his scarlet eyes, those glowing eyes of Oda, shone brightly once again. His vision had returned. The greatest warrior of the Empire, the descendant of a god, was back. Elon could see once more, and it was clear Lorena had saved him. Bernard collapsed to the floor, stunned and overjoyed. "My lord can see again," he whispered, barely believing it. Elon rose from his bed, unsteady but determined. He knew he shouldn't act like a hero just yet. He had been ill for so long, confined to his bed by unbearable torment, clearly weakened and in need of time to recover. Bernard promised to help him, and Elon was deeply grateful for his loyalty. Bernard had never left his side. A tear slipped down Bernard's cheek. He was truly honoured to serve such a man, and genuinely happy for his recovery. Elon couldn't yet stand without his cane and would need time to adjust, but this was a moment of happiness. Bernard had always believed Elon's sight would return. After all, he was the brightest and most worthy of Odor's descendants. But speaking of this miraculous healing of vision, where was the saviour herself? Why hadn't Lorena returned to the estate? It was already night outside. The church had heard the news. Elon had returned. But hadn't the archbishop gone to Grosser to investigate Alicia's disappearance? A temple servant stared at his interlocutor, shocked, indicating he knew nothing. Lady Alicia returned to the temple yesterday, someone explained. She was found near a local cafe in the capital's main square. Iris wishes to introduce Lady Alicia to our Archbishop, Sir Alahan. The Archbishop had a strong, determined look, silver hair and dark eyes. His powerful aura was undeniable, even to Lorena, who was pleased to meet him. But the Archbishop's expression was unreadable. Why did Alejandra look at Alicia that way? What had she done? Maybe she had refused him or offended him somehow. "May the blessing of the 5 gods of Oda be upon the young miss," the Mother Alicia bowed politely, "and may their blessings be upon the Archbishop." Judging by Alicia's forgotten greeting, she had also forgotten how bad things truly were. Many memories were missing from her mind, even her own name. The Archbishop looked carefully at Alicia. What had happened to her hair? It appeared cut short. Lorena was confused. Iris quickly explained. All priests bleach the ends of their hair to symbolize their determination to become the voice of God. Alicia's hair had been bleached, but now it seemed natural again. How frustrating. After losing her memory, Alicia no longer heard the voice of God. She had the mark, but not the divine voice. Perhaps she remembered only the secret first phrase needed to become a priest of their temple, but nothing more. The Archbishop's face darkened like a thundercloud. "What are we to do with Alicia?" he asked. The mother was at a loss. Alicia did not hear the voice of God, did not remember the secret words from her first insight. She would not be able to become a priest. "How is that possible?" the mother whispered. Alicia was meant to become the next archbishop. It was her destiny. Apparently the gods no longer favoured Alicia, yet she still bore the mark. The gods had not abandoned her. The archbishop's final decision was clear. Alicia would be excommunicated from the temple. "This is all a bad dream," the mother insisted. "Alicia's place is here. Everyone knows it. Why was Alejandro doing this?" The mother begged for mercy, asking that Alicia be allowed to stay in her she. "The sanctuary will decide regarding Alicia's excommunication," the archbishop replied. Why was the mother so upset? Alicia wouldn't receive the sacred title, but she was alive and well. Was the archbishop's position truly so rigid? Alicia was only 20 years old. The mother demanded a promise. If Alicia regained her memory, there would be no excommunication. She was serious and would not give up easily. But the archbishop said it was not his decision alone. The Duchess must understand it was unknown whether Alicia would ever hear the voice of God again. All the servants could do was wait and let the will of the 5 gods of Oda be done. Until then, Lady Alicia Uther would be excommunicated from the Temple of Hada and forced to leave. Alicia herself had been planning to leave, so why the drama? Why was the mother so distraught? Alicia was only 20. There would be other paths. Lorena didn't even know what to say. The Duchess needed to be calmed. This wasn't Lorena's fault, but it didn't make things any easier. This was probably how parents felt when their child failed to graduate from the best school. Lorena felt sorry that Alicia had lost her memory, but she would live happily, and that was the most important thing. Anyone has their own path. Alicia would work hard and make up for lost time. There was no reason to be sad. "Let Mother start teaching Lorena," the woman said. "She is capable and will catch up quickly." The woman immediately rushed to hug the girl. What a day of emotional scenes! The beloved daughter wanted so much to please her mother, but remembered nothing, not even herself. "Let the girl just trust the Duchess," the woman whispered. "She will come up with something." The girl carefully and slowly placed her hand on Duchess Uther's shoulder and asked about Elon before squeezing it tightly. It felt like Lorena herself was about to burst into tears. At the main square, in the Cardinal Café, sat a young man of incredible beauty and strength. A clumsy waitress dropped a cup of hot tea and hurried to clean it up. She was embarrassed but focused on tidying the table. Her cheeks flushed when she looked at the young man. How handsome he was. Was that even possible? "It's fine, the waitress can leave," Ilan said, noticing the attention. She was nowhere to be found. A horde of curious ladies had gathered around Elon, wondering who this handsome young man was. It was noisy, filled with female voices. Elin thought Lorena had romanticized reality. The tables were old and dirty, the curtains faded and long unwashed. Yes, Lorena had definitely lied to him. Everything here was far more inconspicuous. The main character entered the cafe and met the same young man who had sold chocolate to Lorena. Elon was searching for the girl. 3 days ago, Lorena had ordered their signature chocolate from Cardinal. The chocolates were popular gifts and many people bought them. The young man couldn't remember everyone, but this girl's appearance was very distinctive. What did she look like? He had never seen her in person, but Lorena had described her to him. Dark skin, red hair, blue eyes. She had unusual facial features. A girl with such a remarkable appearance should be unforgettable. Yet the young man drew a blank. "I'm sorry," he said. "I don't recall anyone like that." That was all Ilan needed to know from him. He was grateful and paid the man generously. Apparently, the Duke had come too late. How could he find this girl? Bernard wondered, pleading with Elle to rest. His eyes hadn't fully recovered, and exerting himself might cause irreparable harm. If Lorena knew Elle had lost his sight again while searching for her, she would be heartbroken. Bernard's words made sense. Elle did not want to hurt her. But it had been so long since they last met. Where could she be? "Let Cedric send Duke Claven to the messenger," Elle ordered. "As you wish, my lord," Cedric replied, a knight loyal to the great Duke Claven. Cedric was exhausted after 2 days without sleep, but glad to serve such a pious man. He knocked on a door and was let in. They had come to the right place. They needed a group of mercenaries who specialized in tracking missing people. Cedric sent 2 young men inside to begin the search. The main character went downstairs. It was noisy and crowded inside. Men drank wine and told crude jokes. Elle was looking for someone. If she is in the capital, the fee for finding her is 100 gold coins. Additional locations will cost more. The price depends on how far we need to search. Elle threw a heavy bag containing 1,000 gold coins onto the bar. The man behind the counter was speechless. "This should cover all expenses," Elle said. "Who are you looking for such a large sum?" Elle is looking for a girl named Lorena. She's 27, with shoulder-length red hair and blue eyes. Just so you know, she is a runaway wife. "The guild doesn't force people who don't want to come back," the man said. "Lorena isn't his wife, then this is easier. We'll manage." The protagonist left with Cedric. "My lord has one more task tonight," Cedric said attentively. "There aren't many people in the capital. Lorena couldn't just vanish. Someone must have seen her." Suddenly, the sound of broken dishes and unbridled rage erupted from the Crown Prince's private chambers. "What did he just say?" someone muttered. "The future ruler is hearing nonsense," another said. "How could some girl disappear right under the Imperial Guard's noses? Is she a ninja or something?" Lorena barely left the estate. Scouts had searched the servants' quarters. She was nowhere. It was as if she had evaporated into thin air. "Are they complete idiots?" someone hissed. Lorena's things could be in Elon's chambers, but she wasn't there either. For some reason, Elon didn't share a bed with a servant. The maid only brought food, and they talked for a long time, but didn't spend the night together. Then why had Elon bought her so many outfits? They had nothing in common. If she was just a servant, not a concubine, what was the point? The beast grabbed Xavier's hand with obvious rage and possessiveness. Elon made it very clear. The Crown Prince should never touch his woman. Let those fools find this girl, even if it cost their lives. That was clear. The woman so desired by the beast would become the best prey for the heir to the throne. He needed her. Meanwhile, at the Uther estate, Alicia's old home and Laura's new residence. Duke Uther rose from the table to greet his daughter warmly. Alicia was glad to see her father. "Duke Gillian Uther, how did your daughter sleep in her old bedroom? The whole house missed her so much," he asked. The girl slept well, just like her father, who was known to sleep like a log. "Let your daughter start eating before the food gets cold," he added kindly. 3 days had passed since Laura arrived at the mansion belonging to the Uther family, a pleasant and kind household. The girl had already been convinced that the Duke and Duchess were good people, and the atmosphere in the estate was warm and friendly. The servants were delighted by Alicia's return, their joy evident. To be honest, Alicia was stunned, literally knocked off her feet by such a heartfelt welcome. The estate itself was bright and cosy, the food delicious. Laura truly liked it there. But interestingly, except for the Duchess, no one seemed particularly upset about Alicia's excommunication from the Hat Temple. For others, it didn't mean as much as it did to her mother. They were simply happy to see her alive and well. Perhaps the real Alicia had only ended up as a servant in the temple because of the Duchess's will. "Alicia has no time to linger here," the Duchess said firmly. Today, all the necessary tutors will arrive. This is no time to be idle. Melia was determined not to let her daughter get distracted. Enjoy being home, but don't waste time. If Alicia wants to go out into society, it's too late to delay her education. We'll start with etiquette and the history of the empire. Alicia promised to study hard, but wondered why it had to be so intense. She had thought that after ceasing her previous work, endless studying would be behind her, but everything was getting worse. Melia was a real tyrant. How much longer could she endure this torture? Alicia had been through so much stress that she lost her memory. Instead of parental love, she was met with a stack of textbooks. What kind of mother was that? Suddenly, a maid named Laurie called Alicia. "Well, finally, I have news," she said eagerly. Alicia listened as Laurie shared. "The greatest warrior of the empire, the descendant of Odar, has finally regained his sight." "Is it true?" Alicia gasped. "Laurie knows for sure, from an ancestral source," the maid confirmed. Tears rolled down Alicia's cheeks, her heart pounding with relief. "His lordship is almost healthy. Soon he'll return to society and politics." They had opened recruitment for new servants at the estate. Laurie's friend wanted to transfer there. How did Alicia find out about the Duke? Alicia wondered. She had always lived in the Hadda Temple. Maybe the lady hears the voice of the gods again. Perhaps the gods have determined a new destiny for her, Laurie speculated. "No, it's a long and strange story, not for the impressionable," Alicia replied. Laurie smiled through her tears. "How can you be so dazzlingly beautiful even when crying? Something must be done about that." Laurie was proud to be Alicia's maid and encouraged her to get ready for class. "Of course," Alicia said. "If my lord needs an assistant, just call for me." Finally, there was peace and quiet. A relief Alicia had never experienced, not even during her work for Elon. Her heart seemed to shake off its shackles. She was so happy for Elon. The main character could now see again, be happy and live a full life. Lorena herself had disappeared so quickly and suddenly, without saying goodbye or explaining. It was ugly of her, but she had only been Ellen's guide. Elon definitely wouldn't want to look for her. She had everything. She was just a servant who witnessed his weakness. Still, Alicia wished she could see the handsome young man once more, just once, to be near him again. But such a young man didn't feel the same for her. She wouldn't torment herself with empty illusions. Greed was speaking now. He was so dear to her heart, but writing to him wasn't an option. Lorena would remind him of his blindness, and he would clearly want to avoid her. Lorena had promised Elon she'd always be by his side, but here she was, running away without explanation. Even if they accidentally met in the capital, Elon wouldn't recognize her. He had no idea what she looked like and thought she resembled the South Korean flag. She had to live as if Lorena had never existed. The etiquette teacher arrived. The hard work was about to begin. This was necessary because Lorena was not supposed to exist in this world. If she wanted to see the end of the novel, she had to avoid its main characters. So now, she was Alicia Uth. Of course, all her previous plans had failed, lacked logic, and led nowhere, but she had no other ideas in this world. There was only one person close to her soul. But now, he didn't need her. She was completely alone again. Meanwhile, the main character slammed her cup down on the table. "Where can I find this damn Lorena?" she muttered. She was in the cafe where Lorena had once asked her to meet, but 3 days had passed, and Lorena still hadn't shown up. The place was nondescript, dingy even, and it wasn't even certain whether the fortune teller would appear here at all. Yet, the main character couldn't think of any other way to find her. What bad luck. Karina had always been sure she was destined to be the Empire's shining flower, that a great future awaited her. She always thought of herself as special, that happiness would simply fall into her lap. But where was it? The Crown Prince was a dark-haired youth, fated by destiny itself. And who would have thought that Xavier would use Karina only to forget her, treating her as just another fleeting passion? All aristocrats valued the innocence of their brides, but Karina had been a fool, swayed by sweet words. The Earl and Cessa Harrington had eagerly awaited a marriage proposal from the imperial family, but in the end, it was Lorena who was right. Karina needed to find another man. Whoever he was, he would provide her with a happy life. But who did the fortune teller mean? Who could this rival crown prince be? The cafe was noisy, truly a third-rate place. Why was Lorena here? The environment was filthy, the kitchen a horror story, and entry was free for everyone. It was scary just to think about it. Still, if Karina didn't meet Lorena here today, she'd have to come back. Again and again. A young man had noticed the lady in the hat a while ago. She was alone here, or so he thought. Karina was actually waiting for her friend. The young man didn't think so at all. Let him reconsider. Karina angrily slammed her fist on the table. It wasn't clear at first that the man wasn't her equal. He quickly left. Why was this girl speaking to him like that? Did this scum even know who she was? The young man wanted to be decent, attracted by her pretty face, but the main character grabbed his hand angrily. What is this idiot doing? He thought, quickly pulling away. This impudent girl had asked for it. Now she couldn't escape. This idiot would lose both his hands if he wasn't careful. This scoundrel had definitely landed in serious trouble. She was from a noble family. This ragamuffin knew it well. The crowd of onlookers suddenly fell silent and parted as the main character walked through them, her voice steely like a great beast. He quickly released the girl. "And who is this?" Karina squealed. Emerald eyes froze in surprise and delight. This young man was incredibly handsome, with scarlet eyes and dark hair. Karina was stunned, unable to move from shock. Why is this scum still here? She wondered. Yes, this impudent girl started it herself. She swore worse than any local drunkard. The young man only wanted to invite her for coffee. If she said no, it meant no. Well, the guy doesn't like pompous and empty people like her anyway. The cowardly brat immediately fled, to the ringing laughter of the crowd. What a humiliation. And so, the main characters met for the first time. Elon saved Karina, just as in the original plot of the novel. The young lady was fine, thanks to this incredible young man. How wonderful he was. At that moment, the main character felt the gears of fate begin to turn. Her betrothed was standing in front of Karina. It was him Lorena had spoken of. She was about to start a new life, with a new love predetermined by fate, or by the author of the novel. Her love was a dark-haired man. It definitely wasn't the vile Xavier. It was him. This was the moment fate had led her to. The girl felt as if she had finally found her place. What would the main character say now? What would be his first words to her? It is a great honor for Duke Clavan to save such a beautiful lady. It would probably be like that. Karina was irresistible, and after that, this young man would want to walk her home. Then the main character would have to kiss her, unable to contain his feelings, even though she had fallen for another man and given up her innocence. She wouldn't let this beautiful young man go. Well, that sounded wonderful. Then the main character paused. Wait, how did he leave? He had been struck by her beauty, he'd just turned and left, and no sparks flew between them. Where had he rushed off to? And what about a happy life for Karina? Stop. Let the young man stop at last. But the main character seemed not to hear. Elon continued walking toward her, his heart and mind filled with only one girl. And her name was Lorena. Meanwhile, Alicia's ears began to itch. Apparently Bernard still held a grudge over her escape and the potion incident. The Duchess's garden was vast and beautiful, personally tended by Mrs. Melia. Does Mother really do all this herself? Alicia wondered. That's right. This garden is a symbol of love. Duke Uther planted it especially for his wife a few years ago, someone explained. Isn't that romantic? Their relationship is almost perfect. The music hall is that way, another added. The Duchess spends a lot of time there. The mistress of the estate sat at the table, surrounded by majestic and silent statues. Duchess Melia was deep in thought, sighing heavily. Laurie will wait here for my lady, someone said softly. Why does Mother look so gloomy today? Maybe something happened? Alicia asked, breaking the deafening silence. The Duchess finally spoke, requesting to see Alicia. The daughter had come to visit her mother, who had been waiting a long time. Alicia sat far from her mother, unsure if she should move closer. Apparently, the conversation was about Alicia's renunciation of the temple. Nothing else seemed to concern Melia as much. The Duchess mentioned that the Empress wanted to meet her daughter soon. What news is this? And why does it cause such emotion? Alicia wondered. If Alicia lacks manners, she can forget about making a good impression, Melia thought. Alicia had practically given up on etiquette lessons. She couldn't bear the tight, suffocating corset anymore. Maybe she should fight for women's rights instead. Melia struggled to say this aloud, but realized it was fate. They couldn't avoid it. The Empress sent a letter, Melia finally revealed. She asks for a visit in 5 days. Oh, it's such a rush. You can't turn a poodle into a noble racehorse in 5 days, Alicia muttered. Mother assumed that Her Majesty had learned Alicia was no longer in Huji and liked her very much. Judging by the Duchess's words, Alicia had nothing to fear. It seemed like good news. But if so, why did Melia look so pale and worried? Alicia suddenly realized. The Empress wanted to make her the crown princess. She was in trouble again, even without leaving the estate. And nasty Xavier was now with the princess. What about Karina? What was really going on? Any mother would have been happy with such news. Something was clearly wrong. Alicia wasn't sure she was fit to be crown princess or a member of the imperial family. Melia was more concerned about Alicia's excommunication from the temple. Aristocrats rarely refuse such marriage proposals. But Duchess Uther was different. She wouldn't sacrifice her daughter for politics. Such a life might be a joy for some, but otherwise the palace would be a cage. The most important thing for Melia was what Alicia wanted. If she was truly ready, they would discuss it with the father. Alicia barely understood what it meant to be an aristocrat's wife. Melia was a sensitive woman who cared deeply about her daughter's happiness. Alicia didn't want to be crown princess or marry Xavier. Besides, she had lost her memory. She would figure things out slowly, starting with what she knew and then learning what she truly wanted from life. Melia worried about Alicia's excommunication, but believed her daughter would find her way. Alicia believed in herself and her choices, and she wanted her mother to know that. Alicia squeezed Duchess Uther's hands warmly. There was nothing to worry about. The mother's heart warmed from her daughter's support, but worry lingered. They still needed to find a suitable dress. Alicia hadn't thought about that. The last time, Leon bought her dresses. But then the worm Xavier appeared. She couldn't enter the imperial palace dressed simply, and finding something suitable in 5 days was nearly impossible. Usually it took weeks to make the perfect gown. Still, Alicia had a great idea, and promised everything would be fine. The next day, the main character went to the only ladies' dress boutique in the capital. So this is what it looks like. Welcome. Emily is glad to welcome His Majesty, the shopkeeper said warmly. This boutique didn't allow commoners or maids inside, which made Lorena uncomfortable. It was a great honor for the shopkeeper to receive the Duke himself. Elon had come to check on an order, but the order had been cancelled, and a refund was ready. How was it cancelled? When? By whom? Eileen asked sharply. The boutique owner said Miss Lorena had personally visited 10 days ago, cancelled the order and asked for a refund to be sent to the Duke's estate. But 10 days ago. Lorena still lived at Elon's estate. Maybe she cancelled the order because she thought Elin would ask for something in return. Elin just wanted to give her a gift. Did it burden her so much? The Duke wanted to take the refund back, but the boutique owner explained the process was already underway. Elon thought his life would improve once his sight returned, but now he felt emptiness. Without Lorena, nothing brought him joy. If only Elon knew that regaining his vision meant losing Lorena. His world was now balancing on the edge. He refused the refund. "Bon voyage, your lordship," the owner said with a sigh. After Elon left, the boutique owner clutched her chest, struggling to breathe. "Should I bring her cold water? Call a doctor?" an assistant asked. "Just a glass of cold water, please. She'll be fine," Emily replied. Emily hoped she hadn't revealed too much. Those scarlet eyes were oppressive, like they could see straight through you. That was the power of the god or door. One look and you'd understand its unimaginable strength. Emily felt sorry for mother and daughter. The Grand Duke arrived a few hours later, confirming Lorena was the missing Lady Alicia. All this time, the Holy Temple's servant had worked as a simple servant at Claven's estate. "Well, this is unexpected," the Duchess admitted, but she had a request for Miss Emily. Duchess Uther would buy everything Elon ordered. She asked Emily to explain that Lorena herself cancelled the order recently, otherwise it could damage the boutique's reputation. This was a difficult request, but Emily understood. The young lady had lived with a single gentleman before her debut. Plus, Alicia had been excommunicated from the temple, and a damaged reputation would ruin her social standing. Duchess Uther begged Emily for help and promised compensation. Emily couldn't refuse. And what eyes Miss Alicia had. Big, sad, violet ones that made you want to pity her. The boutique wouldn't suffer losses and would strengthen ties with the Uther family. Emily agreed to help, but made one condition. When Alicia married, she would order her wedding dresses from Emily. The Duchess agreed happily, and a pre-order form was filled out. Emily held the written contract in her hands, realizing she might have been hasty. But everything worked out. Designing a wedding dress for such a beautiful lady was a chance to shine. Alicia seemed pleased. At the Imperial Palace, in the private quarters of Her Majesty the Empress, a serious conversation took place. What was the Crown Prince doing that was so important? Xavier had been busy lately. Seraphina Constance, the Empress, was disappointed. Her son refused to visit, even at her request. It felt like a knife to her heart. Why had the Empress summoned Xavier? They needed to discuss something urgent. The Crown Prince sat down, but his reputation was poor. He wasn't seen as a good ruler. It was time for him to find a good wife. Xavier shook his head. He was young and saw no reason to burden himself with marriage. Xavier needs an heir, the Empress insisted. How can the future ruler be so careless? She thought. Didn't he like Karina Harrington? She had even spent the night in the Crystal Palace. Stop spying on your son, someone advised. The Harringtons were wealthy, but Karina lacked the elegance of a crown princess. Better Karina than descendants of ancient families, the new nobility, though reluctant, favoured the crown prince. As the next emperor, he must win favour with the old aristocracy, not just go with the flow. No matter how much wealth the new nobility had, they couldn't match the old aristocrats' territories. But won't this resolve itself after the coronation? Xavier was hopelessly stupid. It wasn't surprising the gods hadn't blessed him. He was the complete opposite of a true descendant of Odar. Does he know Alicia Uther, the candidate for the next archbishop? Yes. Miss Alicia was excommunicated from the temple and returned home. The Empress knows this. Alicia had been separated from Kadua, hiding because of a terrible illness and memory loss. Yes, she lost her memory, but at least she's healthy now. This was wonderful news. Alicia Uther was a girl of incredible beauty and strength. A female clone of Ilan Claven with silver hair, violet eyes and ivory skin. She looked like she had stepped out of a painting. When the crown prince first saw the priestess, he was speechless. Her image while reading a prayer captivated him. The temple was closed off, so Xavier could only watch Alicia from afar. At the imperial palace, everyone talked about the Uther family's incredible beauty. The maid said Alessia was going to Grosir for the weekend, where all priests trained. Soon, Alicia would begin a new path and spend several years there. It was a pity the Empire wouldn't see her beautiful face for so long. Everyone doted on her. She had a kind heart and pure soul, a ray of sunshine. The maid's conversation was interrupted by the Crown Prince's voice. "Yes, everything is true," he said. "No matter how long I stood here, you didn't notice." Alicia was going to leave for Gros, but the exact date was unknown, only that it was imminent. The villain saw his chance. He hired assassins to kill every escort. That's how Alicia ended up with him. She was the only one who didn't fall for his sweet talk or threats. Alicia saw through his worthlessness. The scum was rejected by the gods because of his cowardice and insignificance. Let the guards go away. Alicia has nowhere to run. She understood the situation, but Xavier would get away. He was a prince. It might have been better if Alicia had fallen at his feet. Xavier hated being forced. He'd wanted her for so long. Even angry or scared, Alicia was the most beautiful in the world. She growled through gritted teeth that the Temple of Hushi wouldn't forgive this, especially not a prince. She'd taken a vow to serve the gods. The vile prince grabbed her by her white, bleached hair. The future ruler was always irritated by the colour. Xavier cut Alicia's hair with his sword. Without her bleached ends, she no longer looked like a Hadar temple attendant. But he was the heir of Odar. Did she want to anger the gods? He was dirt to both gods and people. If Alicia was good, she wouldn't suffer here. "Only us here," Xavier sneered. "No one will help you." He foolishly believed someone would take his side. Even his own mother would throw him in prison or order his execution. No one liked him. To hell with knives and threats. Alicia is weak. Let her stop shaking. The insignificant little rat had gone crazy. Alicia pushed him away with all her strength and rushed for a knife. Such trash shouldn't live, she thought. Where did this prey rush to? She would never escape. Xavier was stronger. He reached for her, but she stabbed him, leaving a scar on his neck. How dare she attack the future ruler? No one ever treated me like that. He had to get used to it. Alicia kicked the vile abomination in the solar plexus and ran away. The girl who was supposed to die in the raging waters survived, and returned home with no memory. This was fate's gift that must be used. The scar on her neck ached. Xavier would marry her and ruin her life, but she would still belong to him. It was mealtime in the imperial palace. The son of the empire, empress, and the main character sat down at the table. Marcus Odor Constans, ruler of the empire, wondered why he hadn't returned sooner. It's a miracle the light didn't damage his eyes. Why was Marcus the last to know about his brother? The crown prince had been busy plotting, while Marcus watched from the shadows. He looked at his sibling with contempt. No one expected this outcome. "It's unfortunate," Marcus said. The main character arrived at the palace, knowing everything had changed. Let the past remain in the past. Elon may ask the emperor for anything, and his uncle will reward him generously. In honor of Elon's recovery, the empire will hold a grand feast. This is the most joyful event and must be celebrated accordingly. Duke Claven approached his uncle, requesting permission to marry. The empress was aware that since Elon's return, he had never left his estate. Meanwhile, the only descendant of Odor wished to announce he had found a candidate for his wife. "This is hardly the right time," the empress remarked. Xavier's position had always been precarious and undesirable, but His Majesty promised the Duke he would not oppose whoever Elon chose. Duke Claven also requested the issuance of an official decree. "Anything for the sake of my nephew," The Emperor smiled warmly. He was truly delighted by Elon's recovery. However, issuing a decree was no simple matter. Elon's chosen one was an escaped slave from a neighboring country, an unusual and delicate situation, especially if the girl was a commoner. Such a fact would only play into the Empress's son's hands. It was her son who was supposed to inherit the scarlet eyes, but Xavier was born defective and pathetic, though he would still be emperor. The Empress had been pleased when Elon lost his sight, as it put her position and her heir's claim at risk. "The Emperor's dear nephew is so eager to marry," she said coldly. "What is His Highness waiting for? Let him issue the decree quickly." The son of the Empire had barely had time for lunch before everyone began demanding official documents from him. His Highness promptly issued a new decree regarding the marriage of the Empire's finest warrior. It was swift and straightforward. This paper was Elon's only chance to find Lorena. No reward could compare to the document that would allow them to marry. It was the most precious gift. The main character was lost in thoughts of Lorena, while she was very close. Alicia's heart sank immediately upon seeing him. It was Elon. Her soul yearned for him, but the main character didn't recognize her, and Elon didn't recognize the one who had been near all along. From behind the trees came a crunch of a branch. The secret villain of Nolla had been watching them from the shadows all this time. Again, this damn descendant of God. How dare Elon approach Xavier's prey? It was his property. Xavier always wanted what he couldn't have, and always got it through dirty, immoral means. The Empress had kept Duchess Uther in her room for quite a while. Even her hopeless son should have had enough time to spin Alicia's nonsense. Young and impressionable girls now considered every meeting fateful, so Xavier had already turned her head. Xavier was not a bad young man because of his handsome appearance. Dirty rumours about his escapades began to spread. "Nothing more." Well, said the mother. "That's why she thinks Xavier is handsome, and the rumours are based on his rotten nature." The maid lowered her head and reported to Her Majesty that her son had not come to the garden where Alicia was. "What do you mean? Alicia was there all this time, completely alone? Couldn't this cretin do something properly?" Miss Uther's loneliness was brightened by the descendant of Oda. The Relin had accidentally met Alicia, and they drank tea together. The Empress's face immediately changed again. This unbearable boy was ruining all her plans. Alicia should be a shield for her stupid and hopeless son. Xavier was no match for Elon, nor was anyone else in the Empire. So Alicia's choice would be obvious. The Imperial Palace was Her Highness's territory. How dare this ruby-eyed boy encroach on her political arena? This greatest and wildest beast intended to seduce the Empress's favoured flower and take the spoils from her only son. The maid immediately rushed to her mistress. "Everything is fine with Her Highness. She looks terrible." The stupid boy, after the most worthy descendant of Odor regained his sight, he completely lost his. A manic threat flashed in the greedy woman's eyes. She would not give up power to anyone. Meanwhile, the main character walked toward the carriage with his faithful Cedric by his side. "How did everything go today, my lord?" Cedric asked. "Very productively," Elon replied. "Duke Claven has ordered the search for Lorena to be stopped. Instead, we must gather all information about Lady Aliciaratha. The knights and guilds are to complete this swiftly and quietly." "It will be done." The knight bowed respectfully. He was glad to see Lillian in such a determined mood. A deep night draped over the Empire. The loyal knights of the descendant of Odor swiftly completed their mission. On Elon's desk lay all the information he needed about Alicia Uther. According to numerous rumours, Miss Alicia Uther had gone missing 6 months ago. After an attack, doctors diagnosed her with complete memory loss. Recently, 2 weeks ago, she was expelled from the Hada Temple. Fully recovered, she had appeared back in her native home. A radiant smile spread across Ilan's face. Everything was finally coming together. He could feel it in his heart. The main character never saw his beloved, but he always felt her presence, and it never deceived him. At last, the young man had found the girl. She had violet eyes and silver hair. To be honest, Elon had never expected to meet her at the Imperial Palace. What a twist of fate. He hadn't wanted to go to the palace at all that day, but now he was grateful he did. How complicated it all was. Elon shouldn't have existed, second in line to the throne, second by birthright. A child born with the eyes of a god appears only once a generation and must inevitably become emperor. This unbreakable rule had stood for over 1,000 years. For the first time in the empire's history, a descendant of Odor was born from a collateral line. Aline had understood since childhood that his existence alone could spark a new war. For that reason, he deliberately distanced himself from cousins and relatives. He refused to be the cause of chaos and cruelty. It wasn't his fault. It was the problem of those blinded by tradition and the will of the empire's gods. Only a true descendant of Odor could rule. This was the law. Xavier was unworthy. Why had no one ever asked Elion or Xavier what they wanted? The protagonist felt uncomfortable in the Imperial Palace, oppressed by Xavier's presence. So he went to the front lines of the war, where every soldier's position was equal. Everyone made their own choices. Elon had only returned to the palace because of the Emperor's decree, but fate had sent him a gift. Now, the decree held no meaning, but it was better left in place. Lorena was a liar. Red hair, blue eyes, dark skin, nothing like the real Alicia. At first, the main character had simply passed by the woman he had been searching for all his life. Then, back to back, Elysia and Alicia froze. Something was off. The Duchess Uther noticed her daughter had fallen into a stupor and asked why. Alicia replied she'd rubbed her feet raw with her new shoes and hurried to her mother, but her voice trembled. That voice was painfully familiar to Elon. Every note, every timbre, every vibration. Despite her changed appearance, he immediately recognized it. That voice had been his guiding star, the most precious sound in his life. Each day began and ended with it. The Duke, too, couldn't help but recognize Lorena's voice. He missed it more than anything in the world. All this time, the main character wanted to hear only that voice, and now he couldn't believe his ears. Why had the girl lied about her appearance? Her real name was Alicia Uther. Such a beautiful name. A blush coloured Elan's cheeks. Now he knew what she looked like and where to find her. Bernard knocked on the Duke's door, asking when his lordship would come to eat. Today, Elana had spent a long time at the palace, but usually returned hungry. It was time to try the delicious delicacies of Duke Claven's kitchen. Bernard worked hard in the kitchen. Why didn't the owner share the manager's delights? Let him say goodies first. Elon suddenly remembered he'd forgotten to ask Bernard what Lorena looked like. That was a mistake. Are we talking about Lorena again? Didn't Bernard mention luxurious gastronomic delights? She has violet eyes, rare to find, silver curls, and a naive, pure smile. Many people showed interest, but her lack of identification reduced that attraction. You should have asked the manager about her at once. It would have saved time. Let Bernard bring Lorena's papers, the ones he received when he hired her, Elan demanded. He slammed his hand on the table. Why had she lied about everything? Alicia had no reason to hide her identity. She couldn't seriously think Elon wouldn't recognize her by her voice. She meant no harm from the start, though she raised many suspicions. Lorena cared for him better than anyone. She even healed his sight, but none of that mattered now. After their wedding, they'd have plenty of time to discuss it. Bernard dropped the tray on the floor, staring at his master in shock. Why had Elon said what he did? His young master was going to get married, and Bernard hadn't heard a word about it. Why did the young man want to marry now, right after returning to life? Who is she? Why is it all so sudden? Bernard asked. Elon had seen her documents. The manager had only been gone a couple of hours, yet the gentleman was already a suitor. There were still surprises in store. The main character would go have dinner. Perhaps that was all he wanted to say. What a ruthless villain, Bernard muttered. Impossible. I'll go crazy. Let my lord start looking for a mental hospital for him, Bernard sighed. I'm doing my best here. It's all so unfair. His beloved, without even noticing. The girl dreamed endlessly of seeing him again, replaying their meetings 1,000,000 times in her head. But suddenly, she felt bitter, almost wanting to scream that she was the one. But that probably meant nothing to Elon anymore. The most beautiful young man was healthy again. How she longed to see him with her own eyes. All this time, Lorena had dreamed of Elon opening his eyes, seeing the world again, and being happy. Because he deserved it, more than anyone else. She could hardly hold back her tears. Who was taking care of him now? Was Bernard helping him choose clothes? Had they hired a new maid? On the other hand, Leon was a great warrior and always independent. He probably chose his clothes himself. This was the future she had prayed for 1,000 times. But what was wrong with her feelings? The realization that Elon no longer needed Lorena tore her soul apart, leaving a dull ache in her chest. The Nola system corrected those who complicated the main character's life, meaning she was now Alicia and had found her place. Elon restored her sight. Had the world sent her where she belonged? She shouldn't be next to Elon. He didn't need Lorena anymore. The main character was just a secondary guest here. Why was the girl frozen in place? Was she really afraid of the audience with the Empress and unwilling to go forward? It's nothing special, she told herself. Her new shoes were simply rubbing her feet terribly, so she stopped to rest. She ran up to her mother as if nothing had happened. Her Highness couldn't be kept waiting. The maid led the ladies of the Uther family to her Grace's private chambers, where Ilan stopped. The main character was unable to take another step forward. He froze and began watching Alicia. The Emperor was glad to hear that the daughter of Duke and Duchess Uther had improved her health. "Let the lady sit quickly," he said. "It's true, Lady Alicia has lost her memory." The Empress was always present at her prayers, sometimes waiting for hours to meet her. Does young Alicia remember anything like that? "She's sorry to disappoint your Majesty," the Duchess replied. But to be honest, her ladyship had no idea that memory loss could be such a serious problem. The Duchess supported her daughter. Alicia doesn't even remember the rules of etiquette. She had to be taught again. The Empress reproached Alicia for poor posture, but Alicia simply didn't remember. "Still, that's no reason for leniency," the Empress said sharply. The Duchess thanked God that her girl was alive and well. "How are preparations for the debut ball going?" asked the Empress. "There were reasons to postpone, but it will take place this year," said the Duchess. "What will you say if Alicia's debut happens at the Imperial Palace next week?" Melia was grateful for the care, but worried there was too little time left. "We won't make it in time." Lady Karina Harrington also planned her debut on the same day. "Her Majesty has given her permission. Both ladies are having their debut balls late, so it's better for Alicia to perform on the same day." The Duchess was grateful to Her Majesty for the favour. Since all matters had been decided for today, the Emperor expressed his pleasure at their next meeting. The ladies bowed politely. Alicia was so ashamed she'd spoken nonsense. Anyone would be nervous in such a situation. She had nothing to apologise for. The maid stopped the ladies. "The Empress wishes to speak privately with Duchess Uther. A place for Miss Alicia to rest has been prepared in the summer garden. The maid will escort her there." It was strange and frightening, but Alicia did as she was told. What a beautiful garden at the Imperial Palace. Still, the garden at Elon Cav's estate was far more beautiful and desirable. Today, their long-awaited meeting took place. How she wanted to touch him, to talk, to wait. Why did she think of the main character all the time? These thoughts drove her crazy. What should she do with these uncontrollable feelings? He didn't need Lorena anymore. The girl didn't notice the stone under her feet and tripped. The hem of her dress tangled around her legs. Alicia almost fell, but was caught by a strong and painfully familiar hand. She was safe. It was Elle. Her heart ached treacherously to feel his touch again, to be so close to him. Only now could the most beautiful young man see her, and she could see his beautiful scarlet eyes. She always thought his ruby eyes would frighten her once he regained his sight, but nothing of the sort happened. His eyes were as beautiful as everything else about Ellen. She almost called him Saviour by name, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand. She was deeply grateful for the help. The main character bowed politely to Lady Uther. Why did Elon continue to hold the girl by the waist? Alicia was completely fine. If someone noticed such closeness now, there would be trouble. Elon didn't think so. Curious onlookers will only envy us, he joked. Duke Claven said it to make the lady smile. But Alicia was not smiling. What is the name of this young guest? Damn it. She'd have to say the name of the owner of this body. Of course, she could say her name was Laura, from another world, who had been courting him under the name Lorena. But then she'd be taken to the hospital immediately. The girl's name is Alicia Uther. She bowed gracefully in a curtsy. They had not met before. Why was she so awkward? She wanted to fall through the ground. Her bow was terrible, and what was wrong with her hair and dress? Was it wrinkled? The young man seemed to be savouring her name. Alicia Uther. What did that mean for Elon? How did the girl know he was a duke? So she was a good girl. What should she say now? She had only heard rumours about the duke's long-awaited healing. So Alicia immediately thought this was the duke before her. Remus. Well, yes, the girl had a strange premonition, as if Elan saw right through her. The main character lowered his face, just inches from Alicia's, looking closely to see if she had been found out. A deafening silence hung over them. Elon acted like a bloodhound. The weight was excruciating. Maybe she should just admit she was Lorena. How awkward and exciting it all was. She wasn't ready to indulge her heart with fantasies of their intimacy again. Moreover, the Duchess had convinced her daughter that any fall from grace would be a serious blow, not only to her, but to their family. No one should know Alicia had worked as a servant in Duke Claven's house. Rumours had nothing to do with the truth. Only intrigue mattered, and intrigue could destroy their family. Despite everything, the girl really wanted to see the healthy eyes of the main character. Just as she was thinking about it, Elon was already standing right in front of her. She had to be careful what she wished for. Lorena could hardly contain her emotions. She wanted to know how he felt, what worried him, whether everything was okay, and if the young man was finally happy. Her mother would have turned pale with horror if she had seen their conversation. It was time for Alicia to leave. The consequences of such meetings were unpredictable. It was better to avoid them. Her heart broke into pieces. Was such a random encounter truly fate? Elon offered them some tea. What had come over the Duke? The young man really wanted tea with Alicia. She would have given anything for time with him. But why would Elon need it? He never drank tea with ladies, according to Bernard. Yet suddenly he proposed a tea audience with the first person he met. The lady was fine. She looked scared. Yes, everything is fine. It's just that a cold wind blew sharply. There is one place here. The girl invited Duke Claven to sit at a table in the summer garden. Wait. Why were there already 2 cups on the table when the place was only prepared for Alicia? Oh, said the Empress's maid? Then what was the 2nd cup for? Surely the 2nd cup was for Duchess Uther? Stop making things up, said the maid. There are already 3 types of tea: ginger with honey, black tea, and dried orange tea with a special aroma. Damn it, what was Alicia doing? She started explaining everything like in the good old days. A warm smile appeared on the protagonist's face. Why did the lady fall silent? Let her continue. Enough talk. It was just that Alicia was a huge fan of tea. She'd rather pour a cup for the duke. Be careful, fresh tea is very hot. The taste should be rich and spicy. How interesting. Elon never told the lady he drank orange tea, she discovered. The young man didn't like tart or sweet tastes, so she chose the orange flavour. She knew everything about Elon's preferences. She needed to lie urgently. Orange matched the colour of his eyes. What she brought was like a rainbow, red followed by orange. Alicia thought orange would complement his beautiful scarlet eyes, and she was right. It was crazy and so embarrassing. She wished she could just go out the window right now. She needed to smile and wave. The protagonist finished his tea and thanked Lady Uther for her kindness. Duke Claven had one question for the lady. Of course, they had never met before. The ruby eyes instantly became serious and focused, as if awaiting an answer desperately. The girl raised her gaze to the most beautiful young man. The truth would only harm everyone. Alicia sighed heavily. This was our first meeting with his lordship, the main character said, shaking his head in disappointment and thanking the girl for the delicious tea. Lady Alicia has excellent skills. Duke Claven was pleased to meet her. The feeling was mutual. The protagonist would be glad to meet Miss Uther again. She hadn't heard that right. Alicia was very glad her modest skills had been liked. Have a nice evening then.